We all want to be happier, but how do we get there? First, we start by realizing happiness is not a destination. Being happy consists of micro action steps every single day. I'm your host, Brittany King, and I'm here to guide you along the way. All right. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Positively Real podcast. I'm your host and coach, Brittany King, and I have a very special guest with me today. I'm so excited for this interview. I have Erin Leider-Pariser on the show with me, and Erin is a wellness expert and founder of STAT, which stands for Sports Travel Adventure Therapy. And she's been designing women's adventure journeys that empower women to push beyond their physical boundaries, bond with ancient rituals, give back to all the corners of the world that they visit, and learn more about themselves than they've ever imagined. In her new book, Get Lost, it blends the wisdom and personal insights that she's received from hiking, biking, climbing through the most breathtaking landscapes and the once of a lifetime tales of the drama in the wild. And not only that, Erin happens to be one of my best friend's mother-in-law. So I've been doing this series on my podcast of doing a book review, and I received this book and I was like, what better to do a book review than with the author herself? So I am so excited. Thank you for making the time to be on the podcast, Erin.
Oh, thanks, Brittany. It's a pleasure to be here. I love what you're doing. I love your platform. I love that you're reaching all corners of the world, of your world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so fun because even before we hit record, I was saying how Jess has always told me how much we have in common, especially with empowering women and community. And so much of the themes throughout your book resonated with me on just a deep personal level. So I was like, yes, this conversation needs to happen. So I'm really excited to dive into Get Lost. There's so many different things about it that I love. I'm also very big into travel. Some of the places that you visited, I have also visited. So it's just like felt very aligned. So let's start the beginning, because one of the lines in your book that I knew as soon as I started reading, I was like, oh, we are on the same page, because I say this too. But you said like my career found me. And I love that, because I've always said that. Like I just have followed the breadcrumbs into my like all these different areas of my life, which has brought me into coaching. And it wasn't like I set out to do it. It literally found me. And I think that's what happens when you align with your calling. So let's start there. How did your career find you?
Well, 30 some odd years ago, I was an exercise physiologist, which is private trainer, was a fancy word for private trainer. And it was like it was a Jane Fonda world, and I practiced Jane Fonda method, and I was practicing it with, myself and all these other people that are in these 80s exercise craze. And I had no idea that that was going to be my career. And it was. And I followed it and listened. And I opened a studio in New York, and I taught exercise classes. And I went to the Hamptons, taught exercise classes, and it just snowballed from there. And it was just, okay, this is what I'm doing now. Until I wasn't.
I know how that goes. We love it. We love a good pivot.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I'm sure I was like, I would have 100% been into that Jane Fonda. I feel like I was into Jane Fonda. Like when
you probably were.
I loved step aerobics. I also fell into fitness too. My sister's a yoga instructor. And so I kind of just like looked to her for, what she was doing. And I loved that path that she was on. But I love step aerobics, which led me, I ended up teaching spin, and it was the same thing. I didn't set out to teach spin. It just happened, just kept following those breadcrumbs. So then when did that stop? So then what happened after
I had kids. I had two little boys.
Yeah.
And we lived in the city, and my husband decided that we had to move out of the city because we had 2 little boys, and he didn't really want to bring up kids in the city. And so it was either move out of the city or get divorced. So now I'm almost married 40 years. So that's sort of, you know, I could have done it then, but we didn't. And so we moved out of the city, and it took me out of my comfort zone. I'm from Miami. I had no idea what suburbs were like outside of New York City, but I learned quickly, and I made a couple friends, but I decided that I couldn't really commute into the city having 2 little boys.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to sort of take it on the road. I approached my clients and said, what do you think if we do like a hiking trip in Wyoming? And they were like, that sounds interesting. And maybe I'll bring a friend, and maybe I'll bring a friend, and maybe I'll bring a friend. And all of a sudden we had like 12 people going to Wyoming on a hiking trip. And it was really successful. And when we got back, everyone said, when are we going to do that again? I said, oh, that's interesting. I'll plan another one. We'll go to Sedona. And at that time, it was the 80s, and Sedona was a hotbed of new age modalities. So I decided that, okay, we'll do that. And we'll also do like a sweat lodge, and we'll also hire shamans, and we'll also, camp out in this sacred land, and we'll have this bonding ceremonial talking stick ceremony, which I created after going on a quest of my own. And so I brought it to the group, and it was another really successful trip. And one of the girls on that trip was a friend of a friend, and she was an entrepreneur, and said to me after the trip, she called me like 7 times after the trip, and she said, you have to do this. You have to do women's trips. This was amazing, the bonding that took place. And and I'm saying, I had 2 little kids. I think they were like 4 and 7. And I said, I can't do this. I have kids, and I can't go traveling around the world. And sure enough, she really mentored me. Actually, she's from Arizona.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it was Christina, right? Carlino.
That's Christina. Right, right, right. She's
Yeah.
in the book.
She's
I
in the
gave her a
book.
really big shout out in the book.
Yeah.
And I don't think that she knew how much she inspired me. Really, like when you have a mentor that inspired you that much, and they don't know, I'm going to encourage your listeners to tell them.
Mm-hmm.
If you have somebody in your life that changed your life, or changed the direction of your life or trajectory of your life in any way, tell them,
Mm-hmm.
because they may not even know. And she offered all of her services to me and said, I'll print up your brochures. I'll help you figure all this out. And and I said, oh my God, thank you so much. That's so generous. And so I took her up on it. And yeah, and that was before internet, of course. So I had to write up all my brochures by hand and send them out in the mail. I mean, it was absurd. I still have them all, and I read them, and it's just, the world has changed so much. It's
Oh,
just amazing.
I can only imagine, and how amazing that it was able to like that it's, one of those types of business that really is word of mouth, like how much traction that you can build without it having access to the internet, and really just having it be something that you share. And the experiences, from what I read in the book, they kind of just speak for themselves. Like anyone that goes
Yeah,
on it are
sure.
just going to be talking about it. Yeah, I remember reading that in the book, Christina Carlino, and crazy connection, because she's friends with my husband's dad, my father-in-law. And
Oh
so I
God.
was like reading it, I go, Brian, you're never going to believe this. I was like, Christina
Wow.
had a huge role in getting Erin's business launched. And it's
Isn't
so
that weird? Oh my
that
God.
isn't that crazy? I sent my father-in-law he asked for like the pages of it. So I sent him screenshot of parts of your book because he thought that was so cool too. But having someone, this is something that I do in my business. A lot of times people come to me and they have an idea, and being able to like see it in someone before they see it in themselves is truly the best gift you can give that person. It's like, you can see it from a different angle than the person that's just like in it. And it's just such a catalyst into the world that does change your trajectory. And it just, everything is always in divine timing, I believe. And so there's no coincidence that she came on one of the very early trips to Sedona, nonetheless. So a very spiritual place. Lots of great, crazy energy there. That she came at the beginning stages and was able to see it in you. And fast forward 30 years, here you are.
Yeah.
So that's incredible. And I love, as a mom of a very young toddler and, in that in between of where do I go with my business and I want to be a mom. And there's just kind of, it's kind of confusing and your identity is kind of confused during those early stages of motherhood. It's amazing that you were able to find something that you were able to still be a mom and do something that was fulfilling and in alignment.
Yeah. Well, it was challenging.
It's not easy.
And
Oh,
it's not easy.
I am in I am right in the middle of that right
Yeah.
now. And
Yeah.
it's not, I mean, of course, when you get to the other side, you can look back and reflect on it. But as someone that's currently in that of trying to balance, and as my daughter gets older, it's been a lot harder to try to keep that separation. So it's definitely, it's not, it's not easy. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
incredible that you are still able to make these plans, plan these trips. And not only that, it's just like you're curating these experiences for women to step out of their comfort zone. Like the places that you've gone, whether it's been in the United States or abroad, everyone had a common theme. And obviously there was so much intentionality behind your trip planning. And as I'm sure that will be forever, but every
Not
single,
forever.
not forever, but like as long as you have the business,
Forever is a long time.
as long as the business exists, like it's like you plan these trips with that in mind. It's like, how can we get out of our comfort zone? Because that is really where we learn the most about our self. So, you outline, the book is called Get Lost. You lose yourself to find yourself, which I love that. And you share these 7 principles. And I know that they all play a very important part into your philosophy, but could you share one that you find the most transformative for people that are looking to get outside their comfort zone?
Well, I have 7 for a reason, and they work together. But if I had to choose one, if you really had to choose one, I would choose to love, honor, and obey your intuition, because really that led to writing this book. It was a bright sunny day in Aspen, Colorado, and I had just taken my favorite King yoga class, and I was feeling quite good, really relaxed, energized, open. And I came home and my husband said, "Let's go take a run. It's so gorgeous out. Let's go ski, blah, blah, blah." I said, "I'm really feeling great. I don't think so. Not today." And he said, "Oh, come on. It's gorgeous out. We'll just go out for an hour or two." And I didn't listen to my intuition that said to me, "You are feeling so good and relaxed, and you should just take a walk with the dog." And I went out skiing that day, and sure enough, on the first run, I hit a bump and I hurt myself. I fractured my tibia plateau, and it was January 2020, and I had to take the gondola down, and the next day it blew up, and I went to the emergency room, and sure enough, I was out. I was down for 8 weeks. And it really threw me out of my comfort zone. It just put me in a tailspin because I thrive on ritual and routine and exercise, and I just like lost it. I was lost. I really was. And I didn't listen to that little inner voice. And then COVID hit in, 8 weeks later. I was down for 8 weeks, and then 8 weeks later, COVID hits. And now I'm really grounded. So this led to writing this book because I said, when I can't get out there, I have to get in there. So I buckled down and I said, I'm going to write about all these experiences I had with all these wild and crazy women and see where that takes me. So if I had to pick one principle that changed the direction of my life, that would be it. Is just listen to that inner voice. And even if you, and I didn't listen to the inner voice, and look what happened. I have something productive to show for it.
Well, that inner voice is like, well, here I am again. So what are we going to do with this? Because it's like, you didn't listen to the first nudge. And I loved reading that because I relate so much. Like, I thrive off of routine and ritual, and movement is my medicine. And so when that's taken away from me, it can make you feel really like lost because it's something that really connects you with yourself. But I think being able to turn that around and turn that into an opportunity to create this book, which is essentially a love letter, right? Like,
it is a love letter.
You're writing it to the women that you've adventured with, the places that you've gone, the impact that you've made, because one of my favorite chapters was the give back aspect of you going to these places and then being able to give back to them, and then inspiring the women on your trip to like that feel so connected to this place that they would have never gone to. And then they're doing a give back. It's just, that interconnectedness is so powerful. So that's a beautiful, would be turning something that would be looked upon as negative into such a positive thing by writing this book and sharing these stories. So,
yeah.
You kind of touched on this, and this is like, maybe it's on one of your adventures, getting lost literally or metaphorically led to this new direction. Would you say that that experience of getting injured while skiing was one of those moments where you did get lost, which led you to this
I was lost. I was really lost. I really didn't know what to do with myself. I cried. It was actually the first time I really hurt myself in my life. And, I'm 65, and that's a good track record,
It's a pretty good track record.
That's a pretty good track record, I would say.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
So, it was just, it was debilitating, and I really felt sorry for myself. And I wasn't really good at it. People would call me and say, "How you doing?" And, I'm not so good. I'm really not so good.
Yeah.
And I had a pity party, but something good came out of it. So there you go. Something good always comes out of something that you never expected. And that's the silver lining.
Absolutely. And just being open to that, because there is always something that can bloom out of it. That's why I love the lotus flower, because it's the only flower that blooms in mud. And it's that reminder that like you trust, like something beautiful can grow from something that's not so beautiful. So
that's beautiful. Yeah.
Manifesting intentions. You talk about this a lot. And this again was something that resonated with me, of just even in your women's circles on the trip. You said on the second night, you would have people bring something from home to represent what they want to manifest. And that's a part of their intention. And I love that ritual to bring that in.
That's what differentiates my trips
Yeah.
from other trips that you can take with, say, Butterfield and Robinson, Backroads. I mean, nowadays you can go everywhere in the world with groups of people. And, 30 years ago, you couldn't. And I had a little bit of a niche. And being that it was women only was another niche. So I decided to ask some, like when you sign up for my trips, I ask you to think about something in your life that you're manifesting and bring something from home that represents that. And the second night that we're together, we have a ceremonial, talking stick ceremony, and we go around the circle and we hold the stick and we tie on what we brought and we talk about it. And I encourage people to be as deep as they want to be or as shallow as they want to be. There's no judgment, there's no pressure. And if your intention is to lose 5 pounds, that's okay with me. It's not easy and there's no judgment. But people really share their deepest of intentions. And I really find there's a lot of tears. And I find that when you say things out loud in the universe, it makes it real.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all have fears. We all have fears, big and small. But when you talk about them, they don't seem as big.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it bonds the group together and it becomes magic.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about it for the rest of the trip and it elicits meaningful conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing to incorporate just, in anything that you do, like just like talking about your desires and your intentions with people that are like-minded. And we don't do that a lot. It's like, I think being able to, for specifically women, they don't talk about their desires out loud. They don't talk about what they want. And so when you do, it now exists outside of you, which is really vulnerable and can feel a little scary. And so you're creating such a safe container for women to share and express their desires, which is incredible. And it's really powerful because when women do that, they start to realize how similar we actually are. We come from so many different backgrounds, so many different life circumstances. But then at the end of the day, at our core, you hear someone share and you're like, me too, or I resonate with that. And there is something that happens because when I lead groups like this, it happens every single time. There's something powerful and you really can't put words to it of that me too connection. And all of a sudden, two people that don't really know each other, all of a sudden feel connected on a deeper level. And that's a really beautiful thing that you have created on your trip. So I would say that definitely is what makes your trips stand out from the other adventure travel. Cause I know these aren't quite retreats. These are more like, these are like athletic trips, like based off of everything that I read. It's like, they're strenuous, they're long days, they're trying all different things. So it definitely has something very unique and specific about it.
Yeah, no, they're challenging. They're very challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They sound amazing.
Yeah.
So
some are more challenging than others. I mean,
yeah.
and I have to be careful of, who is up for the challenge because they are, they really are. Like, Nepal was getting from one place to the next, and it was basically walking for 10 hours a day. And no rush, but you have to get from one place to the next. So you really can't,
I did a Nepal trip. And so when I read that, I think I went to that same like, what was the place what's it called? I feel like it's called like
Gokuri.
Yeah.
Gokuri.
Yeah.
You probably did. If you didn't go to Everest,
didn't.
You took that left turn and went to Gokuri.
Yeah. And it's like, you get that you wake up super early so you can see the sunrise.
And
and it's freezing.
Yeah.
Like this little Arizona
Not all
blood.
of us did that, actually. Not all of us did that.
Okay.
Like only my superstars.
Got
up early
to get and see the sunrise.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are long days. And also like, it is kind of rolling the dice in a way, because you really do have to, like, it only takes one person that is not in that right mind space to infect the rest of the group. And so like, it's pretty impressive. I mean, I read, we can get into the story if you want, but of all the travel, and maybe there's other stories that you didn't share in the book, but it sounds like you only really had one trip where the vibe wasn't right, or at least for the one you share, which is very impressive. So I also, I believe in, energy attracts like energy. So it kind of like filters in those people that are up for the challenge. But
Yeah.
that's really impressive. I mean, you're doing this for a while. And if there's only one
Yeah.
trip where the vibe wasn't right, like that's pretty amazing.
Well, this was one trip that the vibe really wasn't right.
So there was like other ones where the vibe wasn't quite there, but
I
this was
mean,
the trip where it was
but they're not
like,
they're not all love fests, but
yeah.
but there's supposed to be a little bit of, give
Yeah.
back, right?
Yeah.
Just a little
Totally.
bit of but the one that you're talking about that I wrote about in the book was really just terrible. And that was again an intuition
Mm-hmm.
um principle, because I just put this group together and it was like, okay, so you're a friend of a friend up. Okay. Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah.
And I didn't really get that vibe right because there was just so many strong personalities,
Yeah.
and it was just something had to give.
Yeah.
And the universe told me on when we got robbed at that little place outside of Santa Fe when we went to dinner, and I would come back and our rooms are ransacked and they take like, cameras. And this was when people actually, brought cameras, not iPhones,
Yeah. So it's
you
like
know,
more valuable stuff.
so more valuable stuff.
Yeah.
And I just said I just said out loud, I said, what happened here? Like, what did I do wrong? And the only thing I can come up with, because you play the blame game, I was like, okay, this is my fault. What did I do?
Right.
Maybe I didn't give the bellman a big enough tip, or,
Yeah.
that was, and so I just really paid attention from that point on. And I really tried to get the vibe right and the chemistry right of every group, and really gave it my attention
Mm-hmm.
from that point on. I mean, sometimes, it's funny because some of those people on that trip, and this was a long time ago, they still cycle in and out of my trips.
So,
So,
so
you
it didn't
know,
deter them. They still got what
yeah,
they needed to get out of it. And sometimes, like those experiences even are longer lasting memories because
yeah. I mean, it wasn't a deal breaker. I mean, they realized it wasn't my fault.
right, right,
It was something I just couldn't control. And,
right. And there's
um,
a lot of that when it comes to planning trips. I mean, any
yeah,
any sort of travel, I mean, there's so many uncontrollables. And so I'm sure there's been a big lesson just for you, something that you get out of planning and facilitating these experiences is that letting go and trusting, like letting go of the
mm,
control and trusting that it's all going to work out as it's supposed to.
well, it's one of my principles is, you make the effort, you have
Mhm.
to ask for grace.
Yeah.
And so when I plan these trips, I make all the efforts. I dot all my I's, I cross all my T's, I make sure, everything's in order, all the guides and the lodges and the plane and the transportation and this and that. And then I get on the plane and I just ask for grace.
Yeah.
I said, you did everything you can. Now give me the good weather.
Like you literally just have to toss it up. It's just
Right?
it's true, or else you
Just like,
wouldn't be able to enjoy it if you were like trying to control the weather and trying like
no,
making
no,
sure that
you can't,
everything you
can't.
just can't. There is a
Mm-mm.
level of just trust and surrender on those types of trips, which with that other principle of obey and listen to your intuition, really play into that. It's so important.
Yeah.
So I do. So, the one of the like little subtitles is lessons from kick-ass women's adventures. So
Mm,
the book is really about that. Can you share one of your favorite inspiring transformational
mm.
stories or lessons from the adventures that you've been on that kind of
Well,
touches upon that courage to step
yeah, I would
into the
love to.
unknown? Yeah. Okay.
Would you mind? And, my clients have shared some of their transformational stories with me, for the book. And so I have their permission,
Yeah.
um, to share it with you. And I would love to just, read you just a little bit of, I shortened it.
Okay.
um,
That's
because
perfect.
it's a story of transformation for one of my clients. We went on here. One of my travelers, her name is Julie, experienced a deeply personal kind of success during a trip along the ancient Camino Trail, a pilgrimage, if you will. We hiked the Portuguese Camino, where we joined walkers, hikers, and even horseback riders, heading north along the Atlantic coast, just like Queen Isabel did in the 1300s. This particular walk through terraced fields, lush forests, plenty of vineyards, and peaceful villages represented everything Stat is about, a sacred bonding journey. Walking for nearly 14 miles together all day, every day, was the ultimate bonding experience. We shared our stories while still taking time alone to reflect on ourselves. This client came with a heart full of hope for her son, who would soon be released from prison. He suffered from addiction since his teen years after he was prescribed painkillers after getting his wisdom teeth removed. Percocet led to Oxy, which then led to heroin. A painful, familiar story we have all seen and heard. The worst of it all was having to have your son arrested for stealing and then have to testify against him in court. After 3.5 years in prison, he began to heal. And then her mother died. So she came on the trip to heal, gather her strength, and become grounded with women she hoped would be along a spiritual path. At the end of the world, as they call it in Finisterre, she sprinkled her mother's ashes and prayed for her son to come back clean and sober, while also sending healing vibes to a friend suffering from cancer. And it all came to fruition. She claims that they were all her miracle. I just love this story about miracles and success because there's room for everyone in this world and for all the winners. So,
Oh,
it's a beautiful transformational story. And she is such a beautiful person.
wow. That is
Yeah.
such an inspiring, just like her coming on that trip with like so much
Yes,
on her heart and what she's
exactly.
carrying
Hmm.
and how healing it is to be in a different place, to get out of her comfort zone and really be able to connect within herself is the best gift that you can give someone, to be able to hold that space for them to have that own experience is something that I'm sure she will remember for the rest of her life.
No, and she had, she had taken her mother's ashes and sprinkled
Yeah.
them everywhere, and then the bells would ring, and
It's just
she would say,
beautiful.
"Oh, mom,"
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, like so much peace probably came from that trip.
Yeah, no, I was so thrilled to give her that opportunity.
Yeah, that's
It's really,
incredible.
yeah.
And like I'm sure, how imagine like so fulfilling to hear those stories and to be able to know that you were a part in that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
incredible. So do you stay in, you said you still stay in touch with many of the women that you have traveled with.
Oh, oh yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
These are like
You
lifelong
know,
friends.
lifelong friends. I actually create lifelong friendships. I
Mm.
put people together in, everyone has a roommate.
Hmm.
I find that that's just,
Yeah.
you know, it's just so nice to have a roommate. And I put people together that they don't know each other
Hmm.
and they become absolutely best friends.
Yeah.
And it's just so satisfying to
It,
me to
I
hear the stories.
I couldn't agree
It's
more.
it's wonderful. I'm one of those people that love to have gatherings, and I love when my friends are friends with each other.
Hmm.
I love introducing people and say, oh, I'm so, like I never get FOMO, like, oh, you can friend jump me.
You can leave me out of it.
You can friend jump me. It's okay. I'm not sensitive like that. As long as you guys are friends, I
Yeah.
love that,
Yeah.
because
I
I know I
love
put
that.
it together.
Yeah. There's such that. So that's funny. It's probably another reason why Jess said we had so much in common because I am the same way. I find so much joy in bringing people together. Like I'm also a connector where I'm like, these two people should be friends. And like nothing makes me happier than having a
Mm-hmm.
gathering and like bringing people together and then them connecting and doing things together. And so when I was hosting retreats, that was my favorite part was doing the roommates because
Mm.
I would know some of the people I would know well, some of them I wouldn't, and placing people together based off of what I know about them. And then same with the dinner table, we would print
Yeah.
place tags and specifically put like different people, especially
Yeah.
people that came together, they'd be at different tables. And
Yeah.
like we would do that very intentionally. And I loved that. We'd have conversation cards to really like just go deep. And the friendships and the connections that are made in that way, like is so satisfying. I feel that on a
Mm.
such a deep level. Like I rather just like connect people than even like me have the deep connection with those
Mm.
people. I'm like, you like you have some common themes here. So I think you would really get along. So I
Mm-hmm.
relate to that. So it's funny because
No,
that's
even at dinner
probably
parties. I mean, even when I
yeah.
have dinner parties, I really I take a lot of time with the seating arrangements.
Yeah.
And I always like, have different groups of people that I'll invite. And I say, oh, that husband would probably like to talk to her. And she would like to probably talk to that husband. So I sort of,
You
it's
curate
really,
it.
yeah, you have to curate it. Yeah,
Yeah, I love
everybody
that.
knows when you come to my house, you're not going to be sitting next to your husband.
I'm pretty sure we did have a dinner like for Spencer because Spencer and Brian have the same birthday. And I'm pretty sure I think you did that when we had dinner for Spencer's
Probably,
birthday. I think,
probably.
yeah, that's so funny. Okay, so something, I'm sure people listening are like yearning for adventure. They now more than ever, people are wanting to get out of their routine. They want to go experience more of the world, but they feel confined by their daily responsibilities. So, how do you suggest integrating the spirit of adventure and willingness to get lost just into everyday life?
Hmm. Go take a walk. Wherever you live, just
Mm-hmm.
get out of your house and go
Mm-hmm.
take a walk, and don't go on the same path that you go on every day. Go a different way. I mean, listen, I live in New York City, and I just go all through the streets of the West Village, Soho. I'll take hours of a walk, and I'll just listen, and I'll
Mm-hmm.
just keep my eyes open. And I usually walk alone, but it's wonderful if you have a friend to have
Yeah.
meaningful conversation with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's really just getting outside and just taking a walk is somewhere where you could start.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as like adventure, if you can, organize a weekend trip with your tribe.
Mm-hmm.
Take a couple friends and organize somewhere where it's close by, where you can have adventure without taking a plane
Mm-hmm.
or, leaving. I mean, it's hard leaving your kids at home, and, you have daily responsibilities. So start off small. My biggest hope for this book is to inspire people to find their tribe
Mm-hmm.
and, plan trips with their people. This wasn't an advertisement to go on a stat trip,
Mm-hmm.
because, it's really about finding your people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so let's talk about the role of community, right? So in your travels and experiences, how has the sense of community among the women played a huge role in setting these intentions, manifesting, but also just the journey of self-discovery?
Mm. Well, one of my principles, of course, of Trekking Life with Grace is embracing your community. It's the
Mm-hmm.
last, um, it's the last one, and it is probably the most important
Mm-hmm.
in terms of having a fulfilling, meaningful life with people. And we just have so much loneliness in this world, so much suicide in this world. And I really feel that if you embrace your community, you will be a happier person.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
really will. and sharing your personal vulnerabilities, your intentions, with your community is transforming. It will transform your life. It
Yeah.
really will. And everybody got a whiff of that during COVID.
Oh,
I
for
mean,
sure.
we all were in this together.
Mm-hmm.
We were all embracing our community. We needed help.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we needed the hospitals. I mean, I felt like when I went to go get my um, vaccine, when I went to New York and I went to the Javits Center, and all these people were lined up and it was so organized. And you get in that line and you get in that line. I felt like I belonged to this community here in New York. Wow. They were really doing their jobs to protect us.
Mm-hmm.
And I embraced everybody here in New York, my neighbors, my store owners. I mean, you had to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even my dog walking community, when I was laid up and I couldn't even walk my dog, I mean, I relied on my dog walkers to come and walk them.
Mm-hmm.
And they were there for me.
Yeah.
They were there. And it's really important to have a community you can count on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, social connection and community is one of the pillars of health. You know,
Absolutely.
it is, you could be doing all of the other things, but in isolation, and you won't be as healthy as you are when you are around your people. And, it's interesting because they study all the blue zones and like what are the
Yeah.
common
Yeah.
themes. And some
Yeah.
of it's like the hills and the food, but the number one thread in
Yeah.
all of the blue zones is community.
Mm-hmm. And
And
not just family,
no, not
not
just
just family.
family.
Right. Right.
It's
Yeah.
friends. It's that's what creates longevity is the people that you surround yourself with. And I love that. That was again another thing that resonated so deeply because that's something that I have been creating and building since I started my business because, we have this one of our basic human needs is belonging. And for
Mm-hmm.
most of my life, I was just trying to fit in because that was
Mm-hmm.
survival. It's like, how do I fit in? How do I fit in? And I didn't really know who I was in most of my early days of, when I was in college in my early 20s. And it
Well,
wasn't
who
until,
did?
right. No one, right. I was like I'm like, what's cool? Who am I? Like,
Right. Right.
and then, you get to this point, or at least for me, I got to a point of like, I'm like, I don't even know who I am. And so really working on figuring out who I was by the connections that I was making and how I felt when I was with those people is really how I found this place of belonging within myself, which then
Mm-hmm.
has led me to building community because it's so important. Anytime I'm feeling like disconnected, especially having my own business, working alone, like I need my people. I need to reach
Mm-hmm.
out to my people
Mm-hmm.
and make sure, like see how they're doing and
Mm-hmm.
connect in that way. And it always just gives you it like the feeling you get it's indescribable, truly, when you are
Mm-hmm.
connected with a community and finding your people, because there are so many people in the world and not every community is for everyone. And so once you really do find your tribe, you just like you love them hard, you hold on to them because it's very special to make those connections.
Mm-hmm. Now you want to fit out.
Right. Totally. Oh, I'm like, totally. I'm like, I'm an apple amongst oranges. Like it's just funny because since I have found and like really found myself, I have always been so different. I go against the grain with so many things. And it took me a while to embrace that. But then the more I embraced
Mhm.
that, the more people I met that were also doing that. And we're also
Of course. Of course.
too.
Yeah.
Like it
Yeah.
feels so good. It feels like coming home. It truly
Yeah.
does. So we've touched on some of the principles. I'd love for you to
Mm.
share all of them because like you
Okay.
said,
Yeah.
they all play into each other and they apply not only to travel but just to life.
Life. Yeah.
So let's go
Yeah.
through the rest of them.
Sure. Of course. Well, the first one is nix the competition. And that's important because I see it all the time. And it doesn't matter if you're in the front of the line of the hike, in the back of the line of the hike, in the middle, doesn't matter. We're all going to reach the destination and there's no competition.
Mm,
And it's nice. I mean, you can walk as fast as you can, as slow. You could be a hare, you could be a rabbit, you could be a turtle. Doesn't matter. Um, my second one is these are wisdom that I've gathered, is walk with integrity. And as the saying goes, integrity is doing the right thing even when no one's watching. And that's the key. And I find that I just watching these travelers and these women over the years, and how we all strive to walk with integrity. It's really, it's important. My next one is no judgment. I'm not a judgmental person, but judging another doesn't define them, but it defines you. So you don't know where people are in their life. You don't know where they sit, where they come from, what traumas they're carrying. And it's not acceptable to judge anybody. My next one is start with effort, finish by grace, which is what I went through before about how I plan a trip and how you walk through life. You have to make the effort in life in order to ask for grace.
Right.
So you don't get to ask for grace unless you make the effort. And everybody has to make an effort. I have to make an effort to be a good wife. I have to make an effort to be a good mom. I have to make an effort to be a good sister, a good friend, a good role model. And, and now I have to make an effort to be a good grandparent. My next one, which I really didn't share yet, but it's mark your words. It's so funny because every day I have a meditation practice, and I encourage your listeners to incorporate a meditation practice. It's very important in terms of just, having your equilibrium. So I have these words and I call them my power words because I meditate on them every day, and they're I pull them up from my root chakra, and I bring it up to my head, and it's clarity, consciousness, equilibrium, effort, grace, intention, integrity, and love. And I carry them wherever I go. And when I'm feeling stressed, anxious, I just recite them, internally, and they calm me down. So they've become my power words.
I love that.
So
like they're your anchor.
They're my anchor. I don't know how, but I just accumulated them over the years, and they've just become my words. And my next one is love, honor, and obey your intuition, which we already went through, which is important. And the most important one, and the last one, is embrace your community. And this is all wisdom that I've just gathered over 30 years of life and doing these trips with women, and how I carry myself, how I want to walk through life. And they really work. Yeah.
I think that just, having principles, it's just a way to come back to that intentionality of like, how do I want to show up for my life? And anytime you kind of get lost or you feel misaligned, to have something like this that you can come back to really does help you stay in alignment. And I know, it's kind of similar to having your values be so present in your life. Like when something feels off, you go back there. What's missing? What's out of alignment? And how do I get back into alignment? And having something like this so clear is incredibly powerful. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, we talked a lot about intentions and manifesting, and maybe someone that's listening might be new or wants to manifest, and there's a lot of confusion around how manifesting works. Where would you tell them to begin? Like, what's a simple thing that they can do daily to help them?
Meditate.
Yeah, I know. That's so funny. And so you talked about transcendental meditation in the book, and I
Yes.
also did TM, and I felt the same way. I felt like I did it so well, and it was easier to do, obviously, before having a child.
Yeah. Yeah.
Morning time got that down, but the
Yeah.
middle of the afternoon was tough. And I felt the same way of like not like feeling like a failure, but being like, oh, like I couldn't get to it. And then if I do it at night, I'd fall asleep. So I'm like, well, that's not really working for me either. So I really found the same way with my meditation practice. Instead of it being so rigid, be like, when I
Right.
can do TM, great. But if
Right.
not, I use this app called Open, which I love.
Mm.
Putting on Open, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever, how much time I have, also was great. So I love that you
Hmm.
said manifesting or
Yeah. Well,
meditating for manifesting. Cause when I read that, I was like, I completely relate to that.
yeah, I actually use an app called Waking Up.
Oh, I haven't
I don't
heard of
know.
waking
Yeah,
up.
yeah, it's with Sam Harris.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I'd love your listeners to look him up.
Yeah, I'll put that in the show notes.
He's wonderful.
Yeah.
And someone else I like is Tara Brock.
I love her.
Yeah, she's
Yeah,
got a beautiful voice and
she
beautiful,
does.
that's just somewhere to begin,
Yeah.
and Sam Harris just gives you the tools and the
Very,
real inner workings of consciousness.
yeah, very tactical.
Yeah, and it's helpful because sometimes all your thoughts are still with you. You're not failing. You can't fail at meditation.
No.
There's no such thing. Um, and it's okay to have thoughts, and it's okay to welcome them and say, hey,
Hmm.
you're here, but I'm going to let you go and I'm going to come back.
Hmm.
So it's important not to be so hard on yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's the lesson in life.
Hmm.
You're doing your best. We're all doing our best.
Totally. I couldn't
And
agree more.
yeah, so I mean, to manifest your deepest desires, I think you have to be really still and you have to be quiet, because they're not going to come
The
when it's
noise.
noisy. So
Hmm.
you have to get above the noise. And the
Hmm.
only way I know how to get above the noise is to meditate.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's my only like answer to that.
Yeah. Like where to start. It's a great starting place. I agree.
Yeah.
Where people think that they're going to find what they want outside of themselves or constantly doing. And truly, it comes from being still enough and creating that space within yourself to make those connections, because that's where your intuition is. Our
Hmm.
intuition is not going to be the loud voice. It's a very
No.
soft whisper, and it's really easy to miss it without making the time to connect with it. So I love that
Yeah.
answer.
Mm.
So before we wrap up, are there any, I know you said, you do 2 trips a year.
Mhm.
Are there any new adventures or projects that you're excited about?
Well, besides my two new
I
grandchildren,
know, your grandbabies. Oh,
besides that,
which
um,
is a whole different adventure.
it's just a whole different dimension in life.
Mhm,
I mean,
mhm.
yeah, I had no idea that this would be like,
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to continue to offer these beautiful adventures for my clients. But we're going to do it once in a while when I, have a place where I need to go to.
Yeah.
And so in November, I have a trip going to the Azores,
Mm.
which is in Portugal, and it is called the Hawaii of Europe.
Wow.
And I'm looking forward to that. It's already, full, and I'm excited about it.
How do you pick? So like, how do you pick that? How do you
You
just do a
know,
lot of research or?
I do.
Yeah.
I'm always doing research. I'm always in all travel sites, and
Yeah.
a lot of these things, a lot of the places that I pick are off the radar. So,
Yeah. Which I
and
love.
which it's the only way I like to travel. I want to go to places that people don't hear about.
Hmm.
But when we go, then you start hearing about it. So
Right.
they're off the beaten track now until they're not.
Until they're
Like
not.
the
Yeah.
Azores are going to be like
The next
where
spot.
everyone's going to go. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
So I
awesome.
try to discover it just a little before everybody else does.
Yeah. I love that. approach
Yeah.
because I always say it's like before Instagram got a hold of it
Yep.
because
Yeah.
the internet, like I remember when we went on our honeymoon, uh, we spent a week at Amalfi Coast and we spent one day in Positano and it was so overwhelming. It was crazy busy. And we chose Ravello because that was off the beaten path from the most popular area. But I just remember I was
Yes.
like, Instagram, like total, like you were just sitting on the beach watching people just like take pictures with the backdrop. And like that was all that they were doing. And then they would leave. And I was like, what is going on? I was like, so it's great
Yeah.
for the travel industry, but it
Of
definitely
course.
it's great for the spots, but it definitely can change an experience. So yeah, that's awesome. Well, Erin,
Yeah.
this was so fun. Thank you so
Oh,
much for your time and sharing your wisdom from your trips and your adventures and the women that you have shared these experiences with. The last question I like to ask before we wrap up is if I asked your friends and your family what your superpower is, what would they say?
mm, my superpower. Um, wow, my superpower. I guess my superpower would be the art of gathering. Do you know?
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like um, I have the ability to really gather incredible, diverse crowds in my life. Just and yeah, I put people together that you would never think that would be together,
Yeah.
and then the magic happens. So I
Well,
think that could be one of my powers. Maybe not
yeah.
my superpower, but
I mean, based off of everything we've talked about
you
and the
know.
book, I would definitely agree with that. Is there any last things you want to share before we wrap up?
Well, I would love to encourage your listeners to, look back in their life and take stock. It's such a good exercise um, for you to do in terms of like moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so cathartic. And just look at where your life took you and look where you came from. And then it's a celebration, because life is about where it's not about where you are. It's about where you've been.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's just one of those things where I encourage your listeners to do that. And I find that they're gonna be in a celebratory mood.
I love that so
Yeah,
much because it is so true. We're so focused on the future and what's next. And even when we hit a milestone that we once prayed would happen, we don't spend enough time ce- there celebrating it, being like, this is something that I prayed for. This is something that I wished for, and now I have it. And then it's on to the next thing. So I love
exactly.
that. And so if
Oh, good.
I think that something I share in my podcast often is tangible action steps, and that's a beautiful journal exercise. And the celebratory and to pause and celebrate how far you've come is so important because all of those future or past experiences is really what creates your future and
Mhm.
can change the trajectory of your future. Well,
Mm.
that was so fun. I will make sure I link the book in the show notes, the other resources that you mentioned as well. Thank you again for your time. This was such a
Mm.
blast.
And you can buy the book at my website,
The website, okay, I'll put the website.
and you can also buy it on Amazon or, you know, Barnes and Noble or wherever you get your books.
Awesome.
And if your listeners want to contact me, just shoot me an email. I'm happy to have a meaningful conversation, and I'm
Awesome.
happy to send a signed copy. Anyone who wants it.
Awesome. I will make sure I put, so email is the best way to connect with you.
Sure.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brittany. You're doing the best.
Thank you.